One thing that is very important that must be discussed is the setup and takedown. As you can see behind me, the exhibit is set up and it's quite large, and also you'll see 3 tents, actually 4 tents if you include the waiting area, which isn't quite as big, but altogether you're going to need a piece of land that is about 200 feet by 200 feet. That have to remember that all that tarp is like a big sail. It has to be pinned to the ground. So what do we have? We have stakes that pound into the ground, not your average tent stakes, some of them being up to 3 to 4 feet long. So you have to keep that in mind when choosing your location, just in case there's some kind of pipe system underneath the ground, whether it be sprinklers or sewer or water, whatever it is, you'll have to keep that in mind. And if there is, you have to make sure that those are marked very clearly. Now, also something to remember, that is, it takes quite a bit of manpower to put it up. The group that comes to your church or to your community may only consist of 10 to maybe at the most 15 people. A group like that might take about 3 days to put it all together by themselves. There's nothing worse than a long drawn-out setup or a long drawn-out takedown. One thing that we really appreciate from the churches that we're going to is volunteers, people that will come out and spend their day helping us to put up the exhibit, especially the first day of setup and the second day of setup. If we have anywhere from 20 to 30 volunteers, that is ideal to be able to put this up. But the more volunteers you have, the faster it'll go up. So keep that in mind in your planning. But to make plans, I would plan about 20 to 30 volunteers, whether it be church members or family members from your community. When you set up the sanctuary, there's quite a bit of diverse jobs that need to be done. It could consist of carrying totes out of the semi-trailer, or pounding in stakes, or even as simple as putting orange caps on the top of the stake so that way other visitors won't trip over them if they're walking by. And also tying down ropes, and there's an assortment of knots. We'll be able to show you what you'll need to know about tying the ropes, and also there's pillars that need to be put up and wall boards. There's so many diverse jobs in the setup that no matter who you are, I'm sure we can put you to work. So why don't we go and take a closer look and see what all this entails, and I'll show you a little bit about what to expect when you come for your first day of setup or for your first day of takedown. As you can see behind me, there's a semi-trailer. And yes, that's where everything came from. All the stakes, all the curtains, all the wall boards, and all the tents, everything fits inside of that semi-trailer. The first thing that we'll do during setup is unload it. We have to get everything out so that way we can start putting it all together. And some things are heavy, some things are light. It takes a diverse group of people to take out, the heavy wall boards, but also there's things as light as small totes filled with light bulbs. On takedown day, it's quite the opposite. Everything comes down, and then everything goes inside of the truck. All right, we are now standing inside of the courtyard of the sanctuary, and behind me you can see the structure with the wall boards. Now each of those wall boards stand 15 feet tall, and once unloaded, they'll be stood up in this manner to create the structure and connected on top in a series of nuts and bolts and tarps laid over top. As you can see, this project is probably one of the hardest projects of the sanctuary setup, getting the whole structure set up and squared away. This project will require a few things. First of all, it requires strong backs, because each of those wall boards must be lifted up by hand as they are painted and delicate, and preferably don't want to scratch the paint, and want to be very careful when setting it up not to dent or do anything to the wood. It takes maybe 2 people to lift up each wall board in place, and those are some of the things that you'll have to expect when you come. But it's quite simple, and once the crew gets the hang of how everything works, it goes up fairly fast and fairly simply. Let's go ahead and head around to the front of the sanctuary. As you can see here, these pillars are quite large, and these are probably the heaviest pieces of the structure that will have to be carried out. And these also stand 15 feet tall and also will have to be walked up. So keep that in mind. Let's head over to one of the courtyard pillars, and we'll see one of the other jobs that can be going on simultaneously when the structure is being put up. As you can see here, this pillar here stands tied with a rope, and there's a base on the bottom that has stakes holding it down, and also hanging from the pole that goes between the pillars is a curtain. All this has to be put up. It simply takes time, nothing really to it. The hardest part of this job is probably putting the stakes into the ground, which are not that big. The pillar has to be stood up, capital put on top, and the bar put across and then tied down. Simple as that. After all the bases are in, that's when you put up the pillars. After all the pillars up, that's when you'll put up the curtain, and then tie the curtain down to the bottom after you run a pole through the bottom of the curtain. Nothing else really to that job. And as you can see over here, there's two articles in the courtyard. There's the laver and the altar of sacrifice, which need to be put in place. Also, there's a canopy here, as you can see, which will need to be put together. It's a frame and a tarp put over top of it and stood up. It takes a fair number of people to put all that together. So as you can see, there's a lot more things that can be going on while the structure is being put up, and lots of diverse jobs. All right, now one thing I would like to show you guys is the furniture inside. That way you have an idea, because there's some work that has to be done inside the structure to prepare it for the tour. So follow me this way. Here in the holy place, there's 3 pieces of furniture that have to be put in place. There is the candlesticks, the table of showbread, the altar of incense, which is pretty much all that needs to be put in inside the holy place. And dividing the holy place and most holy place is the veil and the pillars, which will need to be put in place as well. Other than that, the only thing that needs to be done is the silver boards put on the bottom, as you can see inside of here, and put along the bottom of the walls. And also there is these staves that goes in the sides of the walls. Once the walls are put in place, these rings here will hold these poles that'll slide right in, and that basically completes the structure. Depending on how level your piece of land is, depends on how much the sanctuary will be raised off the ground, because the structure here must be set level. All right, so keep that in mind also when you're picking your location. It must be fairly level, but this is not all of it. This part of the sanctuary is only half of the work. There's still work to be done outside the courtyard. So let's go now and have a look at and let's see what that all entails. Inside of the tents, there'll need to be placed a fire extinguisher. We already do set up fire extinguishers. We put up exit signs at all the exits of the tents and also in the structure. That way, when the fire marshal does come out to inspect, you will see the fire extinguishers and the exit signs, and normally that's all they want to see. The main thing is that we have plenty of volunteers that will help us put this together, because as you can see, as I've explained a few things, it's not a simple task, and it takes quite a bit of work, and you'll experience that when you come out and help us. The setup and takedown takes quite a bit of work, but it can happen very smoothly and very simply as long as the things that have been discussed are available when we arrive. Chief of them, among them being a 200 by 200 piece of land that has been either marked or is free of anything that is underneath the ground, whether it be sewage or sprinklers or water. Also a forklift, and also 20 to 30 volunteers is also very important when setting up and taking down. And as long as everyone has a willingness to learn, to adapt to whatever needs to be done, the sanctuary should be set up in a matter of a day and a half to 2 days and taken down in a matter of half a day. So other than that, be prepared for hard work, but the result is very rewarding.